here's Brody Brazil.
In recent weeks, months, and years, I totally understand what fans of Oakland baseball have gone through and why they feel like it's been one gut punch after the next, with the A's ultimately leaving for Sacramento. So, understanding the sensitive nature and timing of this topic, I still feel like it's relevant to bring it up and pose the question, should Oakland put together a task force specific to Major League Baseball right here, right now, starting in 2025? And there's a couple different reasons I want to bring this up. I also want to start with the most difficult part first. Oakland's not in the perfect place to even do this right now. The city currently has much bigger problems and priorities, whether it's financially, a budget, the mayor just got recalled, crime is still an issue. There's a lot of things going on with the city of Oakland right now. So I understand why in the real life priority list, this can't be the highest, but I do think it has room somewhere. They're not in a great spot financially, obviously lacking stability on the political side, and on and on and on. And that's not even including the Coliseum sale, which is still going on to the African American Sports and Entertainment Group. But even that has come with some complications. Even that has been a little bit messy. I'm not here to say that it won't be finished and won't come all the way through, but even that has not gone easy and totally according to plan. So that's kind of the hardest part first here, is doing a task force to try and regain Major League Baseball. It's not going to be Oakland's number one priority. There's also the outside view. And I'm saying this is what people are thinking several states away, on the other side of the country, across the continent, across the world. They're looking at Oakland and saying, well, what other city just lost 3 teams? And because of that, well, the common thread is definitely Oakland. And all of the incorrect blame goes towards the city. Must be Oakland's fault. Must be the politicians' fault. Must be the voters' fault. Let me just say it like this. All 3 teams, the Raiders, the A's, and the Warriors, totally different situations. If it's apples and oranges, we'll throw in watermelons in there too. All totally different situations of what happened, how they played out, and how things ultimately stand right now. We also know that Oakland and pretty much the state of California is not necessarily a market that's in the mood and in the mindset of subsidizing a new Major League Baseball stadium. Public funding, as much as it might happen elsewhere for other teams, other sports, other stadiums and arenas across the country, California, and specifically the Bay Area, Northern California, you're just not going to get that. So whatever happens here has to be privately financed. But that's the outside view. All of this is the external viewpoint of how people perceive Oakland. So those are the 2 hard things to address and get out of the way here first in the video. That brings me to wondering, well, is this still the right time to put together a task force? What would this look like? What is a task force? A coalition of key figures in politics, in finance, in funding, in sports. You basically need an expert at every single turn. This can't be all politicians. This can't just be all very wealthy people. This can't just be all people who have backgrounds and experience in sports. You need a group of people here. You need a little bit of everything to put together this task force in the right way. This task force has to pretty much be bold and set out and say, well, we'll aim for expansion. If Major League Baseball is ready to expand in the same way that they did after the A's left Kansas City to come to Oakland, they expanded by 4 teams eventually. If they're going to add 2 more, we want to be in line for that West Coast city. I know Utah's out there, I know Portland's out there, but we want to be in line. We've done this before, and we will prove to you why we are the best choice moving forward. But you also, as much as you aim for expansion, you kind of have to be savage and be blunt about potentially relocating a team. Now, let me stop right there. You know me, you know this channel. I am not a big fan of teams relocating. I'm not a big fan of teams trying to be overly aggressive in pursuing teams and bringing them in and lure them in with all this money and promises that they'll probably never be able to totally hold up to. But I think you have to be blunt at this point, watching the way everything else is going. It's not to say, well, everybody else is doing it, so should you, but everybody else is doing it, and you can't cut yourself off from this option. I think you also need to be blunt about, hey, the Chicago White Sox undergoing some instability, or what if the Angels can't find a new home? I don't think a second team's ever going to leave Los Angeles. I mean, how about the Kansas City Royals? They're struggling to get a new stadium done in Kansas City, Missouri. We'll see if they move to Kansas City, Kansas. Or how about the Rays have been out there, right? They don't have a permanent home lined up. Who knows, East Coast, West Coast, how difficult that is to move a team. You got to realign things. But the point is, over time, different situations are going to come up. You kind of have to put your name in that hat. You got to play offense, not defense. And it feels like for the longest time, Oakland in the last 5, 7, 10 years has been playing a lot of defense and trying to keep the baseball team they had. It was being essentially ripped out of their hands. So getting back to playing some offense with this task force and not defense. This task force has to create a pitch. It's got to be proactive, not reactive. Honestly, we cannot revisit a lot of what the Oakland A's were from the year, 2000 to 2024. Because all of that was a flawed scenario. An old stadium, a team that didn't invest in its players, a team that was in a dual market with the Giants, but just did not run and race and compete like the Giants did for good teams and winning seasons and great players. So you have to be proactive about what the Bay Area, what Oakland, and what Northern California still is as a market, not so much reacting to criticisms of seasons past, because all of that was a bit flawed. This pitch has to have some branding. There should be a slogan for this task force. It should be very relatable to fans. And I don't know what the slogan is. I don't know what the shirts are going to say. I don't know what the flags are going to be. I don't know what the chant is going to be. But there should and could be something that is easy to brand, market, and sell. Not only to other fans across the country, but to executives, but to Major League Baseball itself, to let people know Oakland fans are still around. It also, and I got to be honest here, the promise of this task force and what they're trying to do, none of it can be a stretch of the truth. If you're just going to be out there to float false promises and things that you can't live up to, what good is that ultimately going to be? What you're trying to promote, what you're trying to achieve, the numbers, the information, the process, it has to be real, right? Nobody wants to have a storybook Fantasyland type situation here. It has to be something tangible and actually attainable. This task force can easily sell the market. There's a proven fan track record, again, when the teams operate normally and other teams in the market operate normally, when a football team operates normally, when a basketball team operates normally, when the other baseball team operates normally, when the NHL team is successful here in the Bay Area, there are tons of people and fans and sponsors and revenue to be had. And the climate, the culture, the appetite for a comeback in Oakland, in the East Bay, and in the Bay Area, it definitely already exists. There's a lot of reasons why this market is easily sold. And how about just the endorsements of other Major League Baseball figures? All the other opposing teams' broadcasts that came into the Coliseum this year and touted what a fantastic stop this was and place to visit, and how the fans were when things are right, how the A's team got support when it deserved it. There's tons of endorsements, whether it's people in and around baseball, players, executives, other fan bases, you name it. There's no problem for Oakland to have endorsements by other Major League Baseball entities. You also have to be very straightforward with two turnkey spots that Major League Baseball could come back to in Oakland. You need the Coliseum site, and you need Howard Terminal fully available. No ifs, ands, or buts, no delays, no roadblocks, no speed bumps, no nothing. You need shovel-ready with zero obstacles for both sites. And maybe that's something that the task force behind the scenes really has to work hard on. Securing these two spots and these locations to make sure that, hey, if this actually moves forward, we can't say we had this all lined up and say, oh, whoops, we were just talking about it. No, it has to be signed and sealed. Not delivered yet, but signed and sealed and ready to go. And I'll be honest, everybody loves visuals and renderings. I don't know what a task force would have to spend or would have to spend, like would have the money to spend or they would have to pay for. Anyway, but I think everybody loves visuals and renderings of what a new ballpark at the Coliseum site would look like, in addition to everything else AASEG wants to do there. Or how about some revised and revisited renderings of what Howard Terminal looks like just as a ballpark? Forget all the other high-rises and condos that they wanted to do initially. How about just the ballpark at Howard Terminal for now? Just like what Pac Bell Park was in San Francisco when it opened. There wasn't all the buildup and development around it. Most of it was just parking lots that have since turned into, booming and bustling businesses. So everybody loves visuals and renderings, and I think those should be produced for both sites as part of this. You obviously also need the money. You need ample investors as part of this task force, and maybe that's something that they start out small with, but they accumulate over time. This is a region of groups. The Bay Area has groups and individuals who could definitely fund this endeavor. And I can name their companies, but I think you already know who they are. I don't want to cause rumors and speculation. But somebody's going to have to pay, probably for an expansion fee. I mean, I guess they don't do relocation fees anymore in baseball, but an expansion fee, the cost of the ballpark, infrastructure. I didn't even mention the team's payroll, which has to be respectable to start. So there's going to be a lot of assumed cost with doing this. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you need to start rounding up these people. And by the way, the funding of this has to be scalable and adaptable over time. By that, I mean, you can't put all of this together and say, okay, here's how it works in 2025. And then by 2028 or 2029, when it's maybe actually an option, oh, well, these are the 2025 numbers. Do they still work? No, of course they don't work. You need numbers that change and fluctuate and are scalable over time so that they don't get stale and outdated. That's a huge mistake that other people and places have made in this. So the bottom line, the very end of all of this with the task force, is this a good idea? Like, tell me a reason why Oakland shouldn't do this. I don't have that reason for you. What I do have is the reason why they should do this. Because what does Oakland stand to lose if they do this and they still don't get what they want? At least they tried. At least they pointed the ship in the right direction. At least they went after something that is not hard to do. It's not hard to put together a task force and operate this and have the right people, and it does take time and effort. And quite honestly, I will say it right here, right now. Who am I? Sports broadcaster, YouTuber, whatever I am? Little old me, if somebody asked me to be part of a task force for this type of project, I would do it. No question. And I know there's a lot of other people out there with a lot of bigger and important connections than I could ever provide. They would gladly be part of this too. So it just goes to show you that Oakland doesn't stand to lose much. Even if they do this and it's not successful, like I said, at least they tried. Because you're not going to get anything if you don't try. And I think it's time for a task force in Oakland specific to Major League Baseball. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section below. I know that was a lot to think about and to digest. I'd love to hear what you have to say down below. Also, since you made it here to the end of the video, thumbs up down below. That'll greatly help me in this video and this channel. And one more thing, make sure that you're already subscribing to this channel so I can definitely see you back here next time.